Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello, and welcome to the Readier Room, the only Star Trek The Next Generation rewatch podcast with on-set stories from those who are there to see the magic happen. My name is Mitchell Mills, Chief Consultant of Services at Paramount back in the 1980s, and with me is my life partner, Brandon Hobbs, and I am amazed that I remembered how to do the introduction, because it's been a cool 2 weeks since our last episode.
It has. I guess we should address this, huh?
It's the big elephant in the room, the big insert science fiction animal in the room, and as always, we take our service to the people quite seriously here on the Readier Room, and
absolutely,
we would never, and I repeat, never skip a week without a serious, grave reason for doing so. So I think it makes the most sense to turn it over to you to explain to the people what had happened.
Sure, yeah. So, we watched the episode as usual. We make plans to do the podcast 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And
just to be clear, this is the Readier Room podcast that we're talking about.
Yes, the Readier Room. And we get a call, right? And, I can't say exactly who the call is from, but we were brought onto a certain project, which we could not talk about until now. And, I think all of our viewers know by now that Picard season 2 is coming, and yes, John Delancey is involved.
Oh my god!
Isn't it amazing? So yes, we were a little tied up in the preparations for that to a certain degree.
Pre-production.
So we could not. Yes. So it was a last minute thing, and we apologize.
Yeah, we should kind of. Now that the cat's able to be let out of the bag, we should clarify that going forward, as production begins to ramp up, our obligations for the project for Picard 2, they might once again call us away. But just know that once the light at the end of the tunnel comes to fruition, you can bet that those of us at the Readier Room and all the Readiers out there listening, that we're going to be celebrating Picard 2 in a way that only we can.
Certainly. I can't wait for it.
Me neither. I've had to stay off of Twitter this past week because I couldn't keep the secret. Like, if I was to start tweeting, I would throw in these casual hints and be like, oh, I guess what's coming, and big violation of contract.
Sometimes we can't help it.
No.
Yeah.
For news this big, this monumentous, that
right.
Star Trek Picard is getting a second season?
Well, not just a second season, but a season with Q.
Yeah, the Q.
The Q. Arguably the most important character in fiction.
Right.
Of all time.
If you're going by a number of metrics, really, the impact on the culture, the power set of the character itself, the way how many stories revolve around them, there's really no other praise that you could levy on the character of Q other than just the most important. And now Star Trek Picard is going to levels it could never even have reached before.
Certainly.
So we'll see if we can get John on the Readier Room itself. I know he's quite busy nowadays, but
yeah, he does tend to be pretty busy, but we will do our best. Never say never, right?
So if you guys out there, if you want to see John Delancey on the Readier Room, you can always join us in our efforts of tweeting at him and asking him to stop on by and share some of his stories.
what do the kids say? Sliding into the DMs?
Yeah, we slide into John's DMs, I think.
I think that's how they say it.
Or he slides into the podcast?
Well, he could slide into the podcast for sure. That's what we want. That's the ultimate goal, is the sliding into the podcast. So preliminary sliding is into the DMs, I believe.
Okay. So one slide leads to another.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Wow. I think we just came up with something pretty deep there.
That makes complete sense to me. So, I told you, you doubted me when we were starting. You're like, you're never going to learn how to use Twitter. You can't do it. And just look at us now.
I know. We're doing a great job, if I may say so myself.
Yeah. Tweeting, retweeting, quote tweeting, subtweeting. I didn't
even know what a retweet was when we started this.
You were to ask me about birds.
I don't keep up with this stuff.
Yeah,
who has time for it?
You were never the tech guy, but
certainly not.
But you are the Trek guy.
Ha ha ha! We're both the Trek guy.
We are both Trek guys. We're Trek men. Just a couple of cool Trek dudes blazing through. Anyway, so that explains our absence, but today we're not absent. In fact, we're here, and some pretty big news about today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a two for one, covering the episode we had our plans written out for last week. We're going to bring that over now and cover this week's episode. So if you're very, very dedicated to the one episode a week watching schedule, you will not have fallen behind if you're following along with us. But before we can get to that, as always, we have our question of the week, which is another thing we take quite gravely and seriously here at the show. And let's get to it then. So today's question comes from Kat, who sent us an email, which you can always do if you want to reach us with your questions. And Kat says, "Hello, Mitch and Brandon. Big fan of the show." Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Ensign. We definitely appreciate the love. Kat says, I'm big at my local Trek convention circuit, specifically in the cosplay scene. Do you guys cosplay? Would love to hear your thoughts on it. Until then, I'll be staying readier. Oh, Kat watches the show.
Absolutely.
We like Kat. And
love it.
That's a great question to ask, I think, because you can't be involved in Star Trek. You can't be Trek adjacent without coming into contact with cosplay at some point. In fact, I think that Trek conventions and Trek culture was the original progenitor of cosplay as a concept. People dressing up as Klingons back in the 60s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, cosplay culture is so ingrained into Trek culture that I would almost go as far as to say, if you've never cosplayed Trek, hard to really call you a true fan, don't you think?
Right, like Trek-E, that has connotations of cosplayer, just right there.
Yes.
You're never gonna, you can't get away from it. They're too inextricably linked. Unfortunately, so to answer your question, Kat, yes, back in the day, whenever we would pop in at conventions, it would be fun to get in on it with the fans and cosplay a little bit. I was never so good at it, but just a little bit. But time makes fools of us all. You get old, your skin starts to crack, it looks like leather, parts of your hair are falling out, you get these wrinkles, and
don't remind me, Mitch.
It's a gruesome process, and by this point, yes, technically I could still cosplay Tasha Yar pretty well, but aside from that, I don't have many options available to me. So these days, I think I speak for both of us when I say that cosplay is not really something that's in our wheelhouse anymore.
Yeah, I think we've both hung up our Starfleet uniforms.
Yeah, unfortunately. But for all you out there who might be younger or more capable, definitely recommend getting in on the cosplay scene at your local Trek convention. You can make some of the best friends and find some of the wildest parties with your cosplaying cohorts.
Oh, certainly some wild parties, Mitch.
Definitely. But those are stories for the private podcast. the secret
Yes,
podcast.
for our Patreon, actually.
Yes, exactly. So if you want some of our convention after dark stories, be sure to be a tier 2 patron. Anyway, thank you for the question, Kat. Anybody out there, if you have a question that you would like us to answer on our podcast, The Readier Room, then you can either tweet at us, and our Twitter account is The Readier Room, or you can send us an email, and our email is thereadierroom@gmail.com, and that's with a capital T, a capital R, and a capital R. And whatever it is, we'll do our best to answer it and get you the information you want. So, that will bring us to our first of 2 episodes today. And I was kind of excited to talk about this one last week. I'm still excited to talk about it today. Maybe not for the most flattering of reasons for the episode, but it's definitely an interesting one. And this episode, of course, Angel 1 is the name of it. It's what else would you call a planet populated dominated by women, other than Angel 1? Some very inspired selection there. But yeah, it's another episode where they just go to a planet that's basically Earth at some point with one minor thing changed.
Right. And it's definitely not like this concept has not been done before and done better.
Right.
It's very uninspired.
Well, I mean, it's what if women had power in decision making? It's like only science fiction could tackle a concept like this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that is definitely true. I think Gene would agree. But there were just so many problems just with conceptualizing the episode,
right? That
led to constant script rewrites, constant reimagining of what the conflict was going to be. The final script was so late in coming to us that it actually deviates from the episode that was filmed.
Right, because there wasn't enough time just to get it as written.
It was just constantly being rewritten over and over,
which explains a lot of the problems with it. With the episode on a structural basis, even just the end product, how on the surface level, how much one would enjoy it. Like on every level, you feel the troubled production.
Yeah, for sure. Just all around. I think a lot of people would agree with this, and I think a lot of people have agreed with this, that this episode is kind of blatantly sexist.
Yeah, which is I think you might look at it and think, okay, it's a society where the gender roles have been reversed and women are in control. Surely this will be empowering towards women. But really, I don't know of any way to execute on that concept without being inherently sexist in one way or another. Because
I suppose so.
It's always going to be like, well, even if it's a utopian society with no problems, it's always going to be like, well, women are all about their emotions and feelings and all that, so clearly society would be this way. And it's like, even if you try to make it a positive, it's still going to be sexist to some extent.
It's definitely a difficult concept to tackle. Just because you are kind of putting the power dynamics out there. But when the episode starts off, like the way it starts off, it almost seems like it's going for a feminist message, only to kind of turn on its head, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes in, and you start to see the cracks in the facade. And, naturally this was Gene's fault, of course. He was adamant about adding in like as many sexual overtones as possible. I only heard this from Herb after the fact. He was still co-producer at the time, but Gene, he went on something like a 10-minute tirade in the writers' room about the inherent evils of women. So basically insisting that, they have to portray the society of Angel One as morally lacking. So that's where you start to see, they go down onto this planet ruled by women. I mean, just the concept. You think it's going to, and it's Trek. You think it's going to have some kind of feminist message. It's the exact opposite.
This is the exact show where earlier in the season, Riker explains to an alien that the human race works alongside their women because they're just as capable and just as smart as the men are. And flash forward a couple of episodes where Riker solves the problems of the female-dominated society with his penis.
Yes, yeah. We can definitely get into that. But just overall, we can absolutely talk about Riker's penis. In fact, I think I planned on it if I look at my notes. Yeah. Okay. I actually wrote that down.
Wonderful.
But just overall, as a whole, really, really odd episode, and it's almost insane how the final episode isn't even as bad as the first drafts of it.
Right.
Well,
it could have certainly been worse, and the trajectory it took along the way was not a steady climb.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the title of the episode was initially different. The name of the planet was initially different. And in one of the rewrites of the script, Gene changed it to Angel One because that was the name of the gentleman's club he would take some of the staff to on weekends.
Right. Have you ever been to Angel One?
I have been to Angel One. I just like our cosplay stories. If you want to hear our Angel One Gene stories, that's a Patreon.
That's right.
Exclusive.
You have to save it for the Patreon.
Right. But to give some free information, Gene would take the staff there, the male staff, at the end of every whenever shooting wrapped on an episode, and not only did he lift the name from the club, but he lifted some of the workers there to be extras in episodes like this. In episodes, what was the one where Wesley Crusher's sentenced to death on that one planet?
That's a while from now.
No. This was earlier.
Really? Yeah. You're right. The wow, what was that episode?
Yeah, Haven.
But we know what you're talking about. Haven. That's it.
Was it Haven?
It was Haven.
Okay. Yeah. From that episode, and anytime they needed quote beautiful extras, Gene would grab one or two of them from here. He had some kind of agreement with the manager. But yeah, I don't like the name. I think Angel One's a pretty shitty name for the episode. Just it feels very lazy. It's all women, so let's have it reference an angel, which are typically depicted as female.
It's a little stereotypical for sure.
Right. So you have this premise, which is already flawed, and then you go to explore the finer details and moments of the episode, and there's just a bunch of weird feeling things going on. This is going to be... I don't know how I remembered this, but at the very beginning of the episode, when they're on the bridge, and I think they're maybe just discussing the planet, or, the give exposition, there's a shot of Data at his console on the bridge, where it looks like one of the lights was out, because it's so dark, and he's in shadow. And I don't know why this stuck out so much to me, but it's a very good metaphor for how off a lot of this episode feels in its writing and conception.
I do not remember that at all, but probably a good point there.
It's I feel kind of silly bringing it up, but it's true, and you can rewatch the episode and you'll see it.
Well, I'll have to go back and give it a second watch. I mean, I've been raring to see it again. So
Angel 2. So you want to talk about the subplot of this episode?
The subplot.
Do you remember the subplot of this episode?
Yes, the virus. The virus. Where. Yeah. I was going to make a point that the show actually addresses. Crusher does eventually tell them to not come back to the ship, but they initially planned to go back to the ship, despite having heard that there was a virus.
Smartest thing
which
to
kind of threw me off. But if we do get to that point where Crusher decides, hey, you can't come on to the ship.
Right, which is feels like the only reason the subplot existed was to incapacitate their resources with the Enterprise during the conflict on the planet. Other than that, it's a completely vestigial time waster of a subplot, and it's set up with the most bizarre line exchange of dialogue that I have heard in quite some time, and I do this show every week. So I believe it's Picard and Worf are near the holodeck, and Wesley Crusher and another kid come out wearing ski gear, and they throw a snowball at Picard, who somehow gets hit by it and becomes wet despite it being outside the holodeck. It's the holodeck snow. Anyway, at the end of their talk with Wesley, Worf sneezes, and Picard says, "A Klingon sneeze?" And then Worf says, "Only kind I know." And it's so bizarre that somebody wrote that.
I don't even know what to say with that one. Yeah, that is stupid. I think I might be a little desensitized at this point after 12, 13 episodes of this show.
I can't blame you, but
especially with the way the first season was written, there's just so much ridiculous stuff going on. But that is very stupid. Yes.
See, whenever something stupid like that happens, I take out my notepad that I'm taking notes on while I watch the episode, and I gotta write that down.
Right.
Klingon sneeze, lest I forget.
Good practice, yeah.
Yeah, but very silly, and that's the setup. It's like based on that, there's now a virus on the Enterprise.
Well, okay, so what threw me is it's infection is preceded by smelling like burnt toast or something.
Yeah, some very particular
Klingon
smell.
Thing.
Yeah.
Which, it being a Klingon thing, you wouldn't expect it to smell good, but apparently it does.
Right.
So the scent is such that it encourages you to inhale, and thus inhale enough viral load to make you sick. Which I'm not sure if that's ridiculous or not. It sounds ridiculous to me.
It sounds ridiculous to some extent, but at the same time, the back of your brain's thinking like, okay, I get it. Maybe I'm stupid,
right?
Yeah. I'm not a virologist.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I would think that this is a very layman's conception of this process. But maybe it's true, and then we'll be the fools. Any virologists?
I don't know if anyone who has ever heard of a virus propagating this way, please do let us know. Email us, tweet at us, slide into our DMs. Like that.
I did.
I'm getting there. But yeah, Geordi encourages everyone to return to the ship in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, that's the thing, because everybody, there's like an away team of Riker and 3 women. Yeah. And then everyone else is on the ship, and most people get infected by the virus, which leaves Worf and Geordi on the bridge.
Quite a combination,
which was not accidental, I want to add.
That's right.
So Geordi outranks Worf, and because they were the only 2 on the bridge, Geordi becomes the captain, and he's given the shots. He actually sits in the captain's chair, and there's this shot of him, like, looking ahead, determined, like in this new position of authority. And all of that was originally supposed to be part of a campaign for Black History Month. We had a slogan cooked up. It's like Trek salutes Black ensigns was the slogan. We cut a bunch of little TV bumpers to put on between different shows on the network and like to air alongside the preview for this episode, where Worf or Geordi, sometimes both of them, would overcome some kind of racial inequality situation. We had some aliens that they fought off that were stylized as Klansmen. It was a whole thing.
Yeah,
there was
that's right.
much effort put into that. We made this big kick. And if you remember, however many years ago, you'll remember that this episode aired at the end of January rather than February, Black History Month. Some kind of issue with the production, like that the order the episodes have been filmed in versus when they were shipped off to the network to be aired. Like there was some miscommunication there that this aired right before the month it was supposed to. And because of that, we had to scrap all of those plans that we had for the month because we had no episode to coincide with it where that was thematically appropriate. So all the TV bumpers, they got cut. We never got the slogan out there. Nobody ever heard of any of this. And instead we just have this like incongruent moment of Geordi excellence that never really amounted to anything. And we were all pretty bummed about it, but I think Gene took it the hardest. Like when he heard the news and he saw that none of it was going to happen, he just looked at us and said, "Never again." And we never did anything like that again to commemorate Black History Month.
That's true. And particularly annoying because the Geordi's role in the script was written in such a way that it was particularly for this campaign. Right. So losing the chance to kind of kickstart this campaign in such a way basically just made Geordi's role in the episode kind of a waste. Right. Really unintended because it doesn't really make much sense.
Because that whole subplot feels like a waste. And if you had this element to kind of vindicate it, it's like, okay, this is enabling Geordi to take a position of power and he's going to inspire people. It would be a lot easier to forgive. As it stands, it's not. And that's the problem. But
Right. Yeah, we lose the Black excellence factor, which it's always a shame to have to put stuff like that on the back burner.
Right. Especially when you never get back to it. It burns back there on the back burner.
Yes, it gets completely charred.
Right. Super burned on the back.
All black and
gross.
Yeah, gross. Ugh.
Yeah, I feel you.
But
anyway. So that moment though does lead to one of the most rare occurrences in the series, where Worf says Geordi's name, and anybody out there who maybe is not picking up on the significance of this, go throw on a few random episodes of TNG and see how many times you hear Worf say the word Geordi. I went through and I counted. This is one of less than 5 recorded instances of this happening. This episode, rather. Yeah.
Spectacular.
It's not fair. You ask me trivia every week, and I always get it incredibly wrong. And then, like, the rare bits of trivia that I do know, you never ask about.
Well, yeah, you are right. This is an important piece of trivia, and definitely one to use in your conversations.
Right.
With your friends, with other fans, just to make sure that they're paying attention and that they are a proper Star Trek fan. Thank you, Mitch. This is great.
I could teach you something for once.
I cannot believe you went through and marked all of these instances. That is insane.
Well, it helps that I have a master file of the scripts that I can Control F for.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
So it's not as much effort as it sounded like, but you didn't have to ask about that, and people at home could have thought that I really was that thorough in checking the episodes. What can you do?
But you're good at other things.
So the we're kind of like going in random places this episode, but
yeah, I did want to. Are we moving off the pandemic? Because I still want to talk about it.
Okay, we can still talk about the pandemic. If for some reason I feel like it might be relevant these days.
Yeah, it is actually a very topical episode.
Mm-hmm.
It really hit home in a way that it didn't when we were on set watching everything go down.
Right. I mean, we had women in those days like we do now, but we didn't have a pandemic.
Right, of course. Yeah, so anyway, the thing that is really getting me with the pandemic is the scene in Picard's room, right? Sans fish tank, by the way.
Right.
And Crusher, that's when Crusher realizes that it's the way it infects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she realizes that, like we said, it smells nice, encourages you to breathe it in. That somehow leads her to know exactly how to develop a vaccine for it.
Yeah.
And the subplot is solved just like that.
It's again, it's very layman. Doesn't quite make any sense, I would say. But
yeah.
They needed to wrap this thing up somehow, and God knows the less time needed, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were kind of approaching the end of the episode, so it could have been done with a little more finesse, I guess. Than I don't know. It just seems lazy to me.
Lazy is a good way to put it. I mean, I think that whole subplot's incredibly lazy. It just felt like there wasn't enough material on the planet, and through the various rewrites, they had to come up with something to get the rest of the crew to do to fill time in the A-plot, or fill the gaps in the A-plot, rather.
Yeah, somehow we always end up with a very stupid plot when we need to get a vaccine.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. The track record of Trek and vaccines, and how
track record.
The track record of Trek and vaccines. It's ridiculous in a way, because the show clearly makes a lot of efforts to establish the science in the science fiction, in some ways, between like the thought into how their light speed travel works, or the intricacies of the force fields, and you hear a lot of explanations for this stuff. But something that is a very real world concept, like developing a vaccine or viruses, is given no attention to getting it right by any metric of observable science.
Yeah, and I like the idea of a subplot or even an A plot focusing on Crusher and her like trying to cure a disease or something. I like that idea. That's an interesting idea. But it's never given the justice it deserves, or at least up to this point, it hasn't been. That's for sure.
Honestly, if you just told me the conceit of the A plot and the B plot, I could envision a version of this script where they're reversed. The importance of them is reversed.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So why don't we discuss the A plot a little bit?
Okay, so it starts with them approaching this planet, Angel 1, which is not a Federation planet, because they have detected that this is the planet where a escape pod or something, a lifeboat of some sort, crash landed following a disaster on another Federation ship. And they ask to come down. They're initially rebuffed, but they're let in, and we have this crash course on their culture, where on the bridge the characters discuss that it's dominated by women, so they're not gonna, we can't have a man lead this expedition, because they'll be just as chauvinist as men used to be in the 1950s, and reverse chauvinism, and they won't take you seriously. So the result of all this is that the ship's therapist is the one to lead the expedition or the diplomatic meetings between the two.
Yeah, very, very smart idea.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I just don't get what Troy's qualifications are to do anything.
No, she doesn't really have any. She has a place at the bridge for just about no reason, considering she gets everything wrong all the time. And it doesn't even seem to be part of the pecking order. You know what I mean?
Right, and I think this is kind of reflected in a lot of episodes where Troy doesn't make an appearance. I feel like she's just in fewer episodes percentage-wise of season 1 than others, which I'm okay with, certainly.
Well, we didn't really know what to do with her, you know.
Right. It's like, okay, what do you do with a therapist in space? It sounds like a parody.
Especially one. It sounds like the setup to a joke.
Right.
What do you do with a therapist in space?
I wish I had an answer to that. I'm like just racking my mind to find.
I know we got to think of one.
Remotely,
we got to think of one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do want to point out on their descent to the planet, we see the first of many instances of that matte painting.
Yes.
So the matte painting of Angel 1, which will be adapted no less than 5 or 6 more times to fit other planets. Which, you know, if you keep even you know, a little bit of an eye out for, you will catch it every single time.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there's really not much to say about this because it goes as poorly as one might expect upon hearing just the outline for the plot.
Right.
It's laughable. It's kind of pathetic. I don't know. I mean, you have the society of I guess strong, tall women, and all the guys are like tiny little twinks.
Yeah.
Right? And first of all, I don't know how they bred them like that. I don't know how they got to this point, but it's literally just, you think the show's making a point, but it's literally just a reversal of roles where you have the women saying that, oh, the men are really the fortunate ones because we take care of them and stuff like that, you know, implying that is what men do on Earth for women.
Right.
You know what I mean? They let them, you know, they do the hard work so the women can live in ignorance. Which just, like, it came off like that was the first, when Beata says that line. I think that was the point where I could say definitively this episode was missing whatever point it might have tried to have.
For me, it was when they walk into the room for their initial meeting with this other society, and there's the immediate, palpable sexual tension between Riker and every individual in the room.
Yes, yeah, and that's another one. Right, this is an episode for Riker to kind of show off how sexy he is. Even with Yar, which was disturbing.
Yeah, it's so in your face that everybody wants to get dicked by Riker. And it's I know he's supposed to be like the Bill stand-in, the Kirk of he's just too sexy for anybody to resist, throwing themselves at him and forgoing the centuries of how their society's been built to be like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I know I'm the president and I'm the strongest woman and the women are the strongest on this planet and have been for centuries now, but you know, Riker's dick though. And
yeah, I just can't control my womanly instincts.
Right, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be with a man who will do whatever he wants or whatever."
What the hell? On her planet, this is a weird fetish.
Right. It's weird because it's like, okay, maybe your point is, even if women evolve to be the dominant gender, they're equal to men, so they would, in fact, develop the same sexist attitudes. But then it's like, well, at her core, every woman just wants to be, you know, I don't know, it's like dominated in bed. Like, I don't really know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, what side of this are you on here?
Exactly. Yeah, that's where it really, really falls apart, because it could have been internally consistent with itself,
Right.
and even then it would have been dumb, but it just takes it to a whole new level with Riker, getting in bed with Beata and her handmaiden or whatever going off with the Federation guy, which, the idea that a group of people would not want to leave the planet when given the opportunity is unbelievable.
Only because they established them as resisting the natural order of this planet and being outlaws on this planet.
So and they're not like resistance fighters or anything. They just don't like the law or like the you know what I mean? The society. So they're living on the outskirts of the fucking city.
They're just sitting in a cave somewhere, and like, no, we're not leaving.
Yeah. They could take their women with them. The Federation's going to be like, sure, fine, whatever.
Everybody's like would want that too. Both parties would.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the main conflict here is, and I mean, I'm not saying that characters can't be stupid or anything. That's. A well-written stupid decision is fine, but this takes it to the level that I just could not suspend my disbelief for. There's no way they wouldn't want to leave that planet. No way.
Even then, it's just not a compelling.
No, yeah, you're right. That's true too. It doesn't really earn what it becomes.
Right.
It's such a. It's such a no you, like I'm not going to leave the planet, and then they all get sentenced to death. It's so trite, but luckily Riker is there to make a speech, recite platitudes as is the norm with these early Star Trek episodes, and save the day.
But even that is kind of like clumsy, because Riker, it's an execution scene. They've caught these outlaws and they're putting them in this execution device, and Riker comes in and he's like, oh, okay, killing's bad, men and women are equal, what are you doing? And then everybody's like moved, but at the same time they're like, okay, we're gonna go talk about this. And then they all shuffle out of the room, talk off screen for 90 seconds, come back, and then they're like, okay, he cannot die, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the purpose of this?
That's happened a couple of times already. When they start appealing to gods too, like that's another. Yeah, that's definitely a Riker thing, because that happened on the planet with the Ferengi and the god who was guarding that city that was destroyed. You remember that?
Yeah, the keyboard player from Yes.
Yeah. Just by spewing verbal diarrhea at him.
Right. Although it
doesn't make any sense.
It's amazing with that, in that Riker's verbal diarrhea not only saved the day, but convinced that god that Riker's race was superior to the Ferengi's race.
Yeah, that's even worse. But this episode is very egregious because of Riker's role. That's another aspect that just brings it down so much. And the conclusion of this episode, where he's giving a speech or whatever. I mean, you'll remember this, but originally it was supposed to be pretty different, right?
Yes.
It was going to have Tasha playing a much bigger role. She was going to be like this, I don't know, kind of like half-seed daywalker. Not quite man, not quite woman.
Right, so she could play to both sides of the conflict.
Yeah, she was going to kind of bridge the relationships between the two, the rebels and the actual acting government.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that the scenes that called for Yar to show off her femininity to curry favor with the government were well beyond Denise's range as an actor.
Right.
Honestly, her attempts were just laughable. So those were left on the cutting room floor, and she was just relegated to the minor role she plays now. But it would have been nice to have been able to actually use her, because she is the character who is perfect for this kind of concept.
Right. She was even on the expedition. Like
yeah,
it was so close. It having this situation and this problem solved by a man is perhaps one of the most ridiculous choices made.
Yeah. It is a sexist episode. And I don't make those calls lightly for sure, but it is absolutely just reprehensible.
Sad.
Yeah, and not only for that, it's just a bad episode all around too. It's poorly written.
It is. It's none of the character stuff is engaging. The relationship between Riker and the president of this planet is not very interesting. The whole illness subplot is also incredibly boring. I don't think this might be one of the episodes I've enjoyed the least over season 1.
Yeah. Honestly, probably the worst one since The Naked Now.
Probably. Yeah, I guess that's the metric we're going with. So what do we think? Better or worse than The Naked Now?
Better.
You think so?
Yeah, better than Naked. Because The Naked Now was consistently boring. This one, at least, I didn't hate watching it.
I kind of did. From the very beginning, they...
I don't blame you.
They're doing the exposition, and they're like, Captain, it's a planet similar to mid-20th century Earth. And I, immediately just checked out. I'm like, yeah?
Yeah. You're in for a ride when we start doing that kind of crap.
Yeah. And it's
just so bankrupt.
From then on, it never bounced back, so... Pretty fucking miserable.
Yeah, I understand that, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really all there is to say about that one.
Just want to update the count before we move on, though. In this episode, there was, in fact, an instance of one character entering another's room.
That's right.
We had
Crusher and Picard.
Yes, and it wasn't as...
Let me write this down.
It was not as sensual as you might imagine. It was just kind of weird because nobody in this episode knows how to act sick.
Yeah. It was very clinical.
Yeah. By virtue of it involving a doctor. I just kind of said, yeah, I didn't really think about that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, of course. Isn't that what it means?
Yeah. It's as if they were at a clinic. It's clinical.
Yes. Right. Yeah, of course.
But luckily for everybody at home and those of us here recording right now, we have one more episode to do today. And
we do.
This episode is a title. I am trying to remember it correctly. It's something like 0100100001, I think.
Mitch. No.
God.
No. Not even close. The name... Well, actually, you know what? The name is special.
Okay.
The name of this episode is special because it was actually conceived before any of the plot or characters were.
Really?
Yeah. One of the very few to bear that honor. So legend has it, Maurice suffered a typewriter jam as he sat down to work on the script one day. The only thing he could get it to output for the title was just zeros and ones. So he ended up with the title 10101001.
Oh, I see. I was pretty off.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's not it, though, because we, of course, eventually fine-tuned that title to 11001001.
That works a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it flows so much better. You can see the meaning in it. It's a little bit deeper. 11001001.
So I guess that's the benefit of kind of working collaboratively with people. You take your ideas and push them to new heights.
Yeah. And with that revised title in our heads, we were able to write the contents of the episode around it in a very, very satisfying way, I think.
Okay, I like it. Really quick, just so I want everybody to understand that story that you just told. Could you explain to the folks at home what a typewriter is?
Oh, that's right, Mitch. That's right. Our audience probably doesn't know what a typewriter is, right?
Right.
Well, back in the old days, when we were still kicking around, we wouldn't write on computers with screens. We would only have typewriters, and so typewriters are they're like computers. It's like writing in a word processor, like WordPerfect, but there's no screen. You're typing on paper. So when you type on the typewriter, it prints on the paper in real time, which, personally, I think was in some ways more convenient.
Right. It's immediate. You don't have to hook up a printer and buy ink.
Oh, gosh, don't get me in
toner.
front of those printers.
Can't handle it. And you know what?
The
typewriters gave us this episode. You think that your computer is gonna jam and give you something like this title?
No. All it's gonna give you is a 404. If we had a computer, that would be the title. That would have been the title of the episode.
I bet there's some new Star Trek episode titled 404 of Star Trek.
In honor of this.
Yeah. It's truly a product of the time in a nice, nostalgic, authentic way.
Yeah. For sure.
So how does the title, how does that precipitate the events of the episode? Why don't you explain for us?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, so the title 11001001, as you may have noticed, it's in binary. And binary is a language?
Yes.
That computers use to do computer things, I think. And, the episode is about a couple aliens coming onto the Enterprise called 10 and 01, and they work their magic on the Enterprise's computer. And
was that their name?
Yes.
I somehow did not catch that.
Yeah. 10 and 01. Now, the other two go unnamed.
Right, because there are others. They're called binars?
Binars, yeah.
Binars. A not so subtle nod to binary.
Yes, yeah.
But they go. There's two pairs of them. They go unnamed, and they're like these small, pink, featureless, identical aliens, and that always work in pairs, and they finish each other's sentences. They're pretty insufferable in a lot of ways.
Yeah. They finish each other's sentences in a very awkward white girl kind of way.
Yeah, it's to go on a tangent about this real quick. The way that the actors do this, it's always like imagine you're shooting a scene and an actor is supposed to get interrupted by something, and that actor plans to stop talking when the script says, so the interruption comes in and it doesn't really sound authentic because the way that the actor had been phrasing their sentence and their intonation, it's like they were preparing to stop talking when they were
it's like they intended to get interrupted. They stopped too short.
Exactly. And that's exactly how these binars feel. It's it doesn't feel like one mind making these sentences, these thoughts, like it's supposed to. It just feels like two separate people
right
reading a script.
Yes, yeah. It is incredibly annoying. I agree.
Yeah.
They definitely were not actors. I'll say that much.
Here's another part of the Binar's way of being that also makes no sense and is contradicted. When they're first introduced, the Binars are standing side by side, and you kind of get the sense that they always do that. And at one point, they have to turn around, so they kind of like shuffle as a unit around rather than just both of them turning on their place. So the way that they do it is the one who was on the left remains on the left as they turn around. And you're like, okay, I guess that's something that they do, because it's a very awkward gesture for them to do.
Right, yeah, I get you.
But then later in the episode, they just turn around normally, such that they shift being on each other's left and right side.
Yeah, so we're to understand that they basically just decided to do that one little spin trick for the hell of it.
Yeah, it's just weird physical direction given that's not maintained. It's so
it's not followed up on.
Right, it's so obvious. Either keep doing it or don't do it. But yeah.
That's definitely you're catching some serious stuff here this week.
These are the things I care about. If you were to ask me about how well the plot was written or the dialogue was conceived, I'd have no answer for you. But if you were to ask me on the internal logic of the Binar's cultural mores, then yes, I have you covered.
Yeah. So the did the episode explain why the Binars have a handler?
No, but they do. And so what happens is okay, to explain some of the plot, the Enterprise goes to a Federation space station to dock and get repairs and upgrades. And when they do, Picard goes to meet the Binars, who are the engineers to work on the ship, and their handler in an airlock. And this is where we get one of the more surreal moments of the episode, because Picard goes to meet a captain or a commander who looks exactly like him. Like they're so similar aesthetically. It's uncanny. And I'm trying to remember that actor's name. I think it was Gene Dynarski. Not our Gene.
Yeah.
Mind you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But a Gene. And the reason that they look so similar is that Gene initially was in the running to play the role of Picard that Patrick ultimately got. And that was the look that Gene wanted. And initially he was looking at the other Gene. Oh my god, I can't handle this. Gene and Gene.
Too many genes.
Too many genes.
Good genes, bad genes.
Right. It's you have one too many gene, you have one too many chromosomes, and it's all messed up. But
doesn't that just explain Star Trek?
Doesn't it though? But eventually, in that casting process, Gene Dynarski was eventually ousted from the role because of some allegations of sexual misconduct, something or other. Which I guess not all genes are impervious to, but at least ours was. And, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because it led us to casting Patrick, who I think we can all agree was born to be Picard.
Certainly.
And that's why he's still Picard to this day.
That's why we still see him on the silver screen.
Exactly. But the point is that, we had Gene come back to be this Commander Generos. And
is that what his name was?
I believe so. Quadernos? Quiznos?
Quadraneros?
I'm not sure. It's something like that, but it's a bit role, but we gave it to him as like a concession. It's like, yeah, kind of sucks what happened to you. It happens to all of us, but, come back, play this role, get a paycheck, and maybe we'll see you again sometime.
Yeah.
Looking out for each other. Gene's got to look out for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our Gene needed all the help he could get, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. As for beyond that, why they have a handler in this episode, it's never really explained. And he doesn't have much to do except be there. So the reason for this character was more external, more meta than story purposes.
That makes sense. That does kind of explain why he's there in the first place. Because these aliens seem perfectly autonomous,
right,
to me.
And that's part of the problem, part of the thrust of the plot.
Yes, that autonomy is what drives the conflict.
Yes.
So yeah, they're there to update the computer, right? And this is kind of portrayed to the audience via the holodeck, right?
Yes,
and
that's the main thing that they upgrade. That's like their first big project.
Right. And I cannot stress how annoying it is that every time we see the holodeck, every character has to be in awe of it in every single episode. It's like they've never seen it before.
What's amazing to me is that first they upgrade it and they bring Riker there and like, Riker, check out the new and improved holodeck. So Riker's like, okay, generate me a jazz bar. And it does. And Riker walks in and he's like, wow, you guys really upgraded it. You're understating your abilities when it's the same exact thing that it could have done before. And
right.
Only in its AI, I guess, is there a demonstrable upgrade? But Riker hasn't seen that to that point. Not even?
Yeah. No. I mean, they pay all this lip service to what's her name? Toilette.
The name of the character or the name of the...
Yeah, the name of the character.
No, it was it's Minuet.
Minuet. Yeah. They pay all this lip service to her being, such an improvement from all of the other characters in the holodeck. But just a few episodes ago, Picard was having this philosophical conversation with a fictional character about the meaning of existence.
True. But
in what way is it an upgrade?
It might be when Picard ultimately eventually comes in and she starts speaking French, having known to access the databanks of the computer because Picard speaks French, nominally.
I'm not buying it.
What's weird to me, though, is that her AI knows it's an AI, a computer, without having been given direction to do that. Which, sure, maybe the Binar is programmed it that way to be more forthcoming and sentient rather than believing it's real. But I don't know. It's just a really hard thing to accept because you're told, like, okay, they're doing these upgrades to the holodeck. It's amazing, and okay, I guess it is. Like, I don't really feel it.
Yeah, we're very much. I mean, Picard walks in and just looks around and beams like an old man looking at an iPhone. It's not at all convincing, and he already did that a couple episodes ago. Right. Like, how many times do we have to be told the holodeck is great? I don't understand it.
And the conflict of the plot hinges on these characters being so mesmerized by how great the holodeck is. Which is that's what really puts it over the edge as being a problem.
Now, so I do believe that we initially had it so that the episode where the holodeck malfunctions, I believe it was going to be that actually followed this episode. And they would be related, as in like the upgrade actually makes the holodeck malfunction, and I think that wasn't necessarily like the same driving plot point that it was in this episode where the aliens need to get home or whatever.
See, I thought that I didn't know that. I thought it would be the chronologically it was intended, and like, okay, the holodeck had these problems, so please upgrade it, please fix the problems, and that leads to this.
Well, it kind of worked out in that way. So we flipped them, and they fix it because there's problems.
Right.
But it might explain that similar awe of the holodeck in both episodes, whereas before, if these episodes were flipped, it wouldn't feel so redundant.
I guess that would make a lot more sense and be a lot more palatable.
Right. Because it would have been the first time we actually do see the holodeck in real action, that way. So
not just like a forest scene or
yeah, exactly. A shot in the woods.
Right. Like, wow, it's a real tree.
Riker not knowing what a holodeck was. This episode is the culmination of Riker's assholishness, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The blind man teaching an android to paint bit.
I wrote that down. I was like, there's a series of weird interactions between Riker and the rest of the staff where the tone is so bizarre that it's like, okay, I guess this is going to be a Riker-centric episode because these are all highlighting Riker in some way, but it's really not putting him in a good light.
No, not at all.
Where Worf is like, I'm going to do my best to win the game, and Riker's like, well, what the hell are you doing? Why are you taking it seriously? You should never try to win.
And then Worf absolutely dunks on him.
He does. An amazing point. That Worf had. Like, why keep score if I'm not supposed to win? And then they like undercut Worf's victory there by saying, "Oh, he's joking." How is that a joke? Like, Worf doesn't say something funny. He makes a good point. Denise says he's joking. Riker, let's call her Denise, like that's a character name. Yar says that he's joking. Riker says, "I'm not so sure that he's joking," which is right. But it shouldn't be. And then everybody walks away from each other and nothing comes of this.
Yes.
And then...
very stupid interaction.
Then he goes to Geordi and Data, which you're right. He just flat out insults them for no real reason.
and Geordi looks back at him awkwardly like he wants to say something.
Right, but he's like, I can't say that to my boss, I guess.
Right.
But the most bizarre thing is that this somehow comes up later in a plot-relevant way that Geordi and Data were doing this. Which is astounding to me.
Wait, does it?
Yes. At one point, much later in the episode, the crews were marking how the Binars gained control of the bridge because nobody was there. And Data says, "Oh, I should have been there." And Geordi says, "Well, Data, you can't be there 24/7. And Data's like, "No, Geordi, I can. I'm a fucking robot. I shouldn't have been out painting in my room." Which was actually like a pretty interesting little bit of Data guilt. Like I liked that. That was a good point. It's like Data's desire to be human and explore human things holding him back from actually doing his best possible duty. Is interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
That's a more interesting concept than I would have credited season 1 TNG of exploring.
But you know what? I think it was accidental.
He said that. Data says like I shouldn't have been off painting because there's no reason for me to do that. But it's never followed up on. It's just one line of dialogue, and it's
kind of thrown away.
Right. So that could have been cool. It was not, but it could have been. But anyway, and then I think Riker... Oh, you know what? Him and Picard have this really weird series of interactions where Picard is like filleting Riker. He's like, "Oh my god, number one, you did such a good job parking that ship." And then they're like walking away, and Picard's like, "What are you gonna do with your off time?" And Riker's like, "I don't know." And Picard's like, "You should definitely do something because you definitely earned it. You've been doing such a good job recently."
Right, good boy.
Right. What is all this for? What does this establish? It doesn't. It doesn't. Doesn't say.
It's like
anything.
watching a couple of podcasters compliment themselves.
Right. It's.
You're doing a great job, by
the way. Oh, really? Thank you. I say a lot about the trivia that you asked me, but I think the questions you pick out at the end of every episode have been stellar.
Thank you. Look forward to the one this episode.
I'm eagerly looking forward to it. I'm kind of tempted to cut the discussion of this episode short just to get closer to it, because it's always the highlight.
I know it's tough, but we gotta keep trucking.
Trekking?
Gotta keep trekking.
So, all of this first half of this episode, I think, is entirely wasted time. there's so many scenes, and I wrote in my notes because it was about to be the end of Act 3, I believe, where there's that commercial break, and I was saying halfway into the episode, and I don't know what the conflict of this episode is.
Yeah, it's not introduced at all, and it almost seems like the ship malfunctions for some vague non-reason.
Right. And eventually, I think right at the commercial break, they introduce like that it might be a little more sinister than that.
Right, but barely. It's barely sinister. And
that's like when the episode starts. All the stuff before that, with Riker antagonizing his crew with the jazz bar, was so boring. I didn't like any
It's just
of it.
the script filleting Riker. Really, you know what bothered me? Riker decides to go to, he says Nolans, first of all, which, how would he know to use that accent?
Right.
But why does no one in Star Trek ever want to go to the near past?
Right. Why is it always the mid-20th century?
Right. So yeah, that was definitely, that always bothers me when it shows up. But I don't know if it was necessarily boring. I like to see Riker, kind of gallivanting around doing his kind of asshole-ish thing. But you're right in that this episode does not set up the conflict in a proper way at all, and most of the time it's just characters. There's either Riker in the holodeck talking to this woman that he seems to want to have a relationship with, despite her being an AI,
and him knowing
and he, he asks her, doesn't he ask her like, oh, how far can we take this or whatever?
Yeah.
Which is just stupid. And then we have Wesley on the bridge. Wesley, who is in charge of the bridge, ogling these disgusting bald aliens.
I have nitpicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we hear some of the Binar language, and I'm going to complain about this. There's no reason for them to not understand what the Binars are saying. Universal translator.
Yep.
The fact that the Binars switch between English and their Binar language implies that they all learned English, and that the universal translator doesn't work for. I don't know if they're speaking binary or whatever language they are speaking, and obviously the idea of speaking binary is kind of ridiculous. But, yeah, hated that. Because that's like them discussing their plans. If that was able to be understood, then everybody would know that they're up to something.
Yeah, I think you could wave this one away by, maybe the language is too fast, too complex for the universal translator.
Maybe, I don't know, but I do know that these are people officially employed by Starfleet, by the Federation. So you would think that they would be prepared to communicate with them.
I guess there is very little excuse for that.
So that was dumb. Everybody just kind of watching the Binars and being like, I don't trust these guys. Better keep an eye on them. And then like they just get away with their plan.
they just do nothing. They are a non-entity in this story.
Right.
In fact, it's almost a story about nothing. The resolution is so dumb, and Picard's just kind of like, well, okay, whatever. No one got hurt, so it's fine. Well, this is like you're hijacking a Federation ship.
They when they're being led away by the end, somebody says like, oh, there will be an investigation or an examination or whatever. And
yeah, bullshit.
In my mind, I'm just picturing these guys just getting like executed for sedition.
I mean, they kind of deserve it, don't they?
Yeah, they hijacked a ship. And another thing, do they ever establish why they couldn't just ask the Federation for help?
No. Their excuse was, we thought you might say no. And then I think Riker is like, That's, because they think in binary, Captain, or something like that.
That was the stupidest line of the episode, perhaps of the season. It's
the award goes to...
Not only is the idea of thinking in binary like dumb, but like let's say they only deal in absolutes. The Binars go on to say, we thought you might say no, which is not
like we thought you might,
right? Which is an intrinsically non-binary statement.
Right.
So why even put that line in? It's so dumb. It's so stupid.
Yeah. It's another episode that hinges on there being a manufactured conflict that could be avoided if someone just explained themselves at any point.
Right.
At any.
And it's there had to have been some way to do this episode where they're not Federation employees, because at that point it's a lot more believable to think that the Federation might not aid them, even though it's kind of not, because that's all the Federation does. It bends over backwards to save people in those ways, as long as they're not non-spacefaring races.
Right.
But it would be more believable. The fact that they work for the fucking Federation and
isn't the Federation absolutely obligated to help these people?
Yeah, you would think
they
so.
Have to be. Because, I mean, especially considering, like you just said, they'll do, like, anything for anyone, pretty much.
And their plan was to have Riker trapped on the ship so that he would eventually come out to help them. Because their plan specifically involves Riker not being evacuated. So it's like, we need the cooperation of somebody to come and do the final stages of saving us at some point.
Yeah.
So when their plan involves a Starfleet officer helping them anyway, why can't they just ask?
Yeah, what if Riker said no?
Right. And like, you make this holodeck entity, this AI that's like going to so completely enthrall Riker, and not have that person like try to convince Riker to do anything. It's none of it makes any sense. It's so dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fake conflict.
Is this? It is. It's a non-conflict, really. Is this holodeck entity the one that Riker sees in some like mind illusion several seasons from now?
Okay. Don't spoil it, but yes.
Okay.
It is, which is, when we get to that, we're going to have a lot to talk about there.
Can't wait.
Another point I'd like to bring up is, at some point, it's this little tidbit of information is given that the Enterprise computer, I think, is as big as the planet's computer that these aliens are from.
Yeah. I don't know.
Which, like, what?
Is that like size or storage space or what?
I mean,
really,
storage-wise, though,
either doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no. When you're dealing with a race of aliens that is so connected to technology that they shut down when their computer is turned off, how is a starship's computer the same size as it?
Right.
So that's another plot convenience that is just not believable at all.
Really, it makes sense that, given all of this, that this episode was born from a typewriter jamming.
Yeah. It was never meant to exist.
Right.
And you can definitely see that in the final product.
So it's like, this conflict only exists because information isn't given out to the audience nor the characters, and there's really nothing to solve.
It's basically like a high school drama.
Right. The intricacies of this alien race aren't really thought out very well either, and they just kind of exist in a way that's pasted on top of Star Trek rather than really being integrated into it.
Right.
Nothing's natural. It's just a typewriter jam.
Well, I mean, the aliens were originally different. To be fair,
really,
yeah. I mean, you say they're pasted on top, and they kind of are. I mean, originally they were going to be pretty standard fare, sexy aliens.
Oh,
like half naked, dumb, the whole 9 yards. And because I think there's a rule in the Trek Bible about this.
Yeah, it's hard to remember what was a rule and what just kind of became Gene's fancy for a day.
Yeah, there's that, and also considering we break the rules so much, it almost doesn't matter. But I think there was a rule, but the sexy alien thing didn't pan out because we actually caught the ire of some feminist campaign. Who was? Yeah. I mean, again, you remember the mail room.
Mm-hmm.
They were protesting against the male gaze of Star Trek, which, I guess, to be fair, sure. Whenever we feature women, they tend to be pretty scantily clad,
Right.
And it was actually Maurice himself who proposed the change to the binars, which was just, make them smart, which has the effect of also making them unattractive.
Right.
They come as pairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
In much the same way binars come as pairs. Those qualities come in pairs.
Yes.
So makeup just went to work making them look disturbing, just as disgusting as possible. And it's funny because you see when you watch the episode, a couple of those aliens actually had pretty faces, right?
Right.
Again, another example of Angel 1 casting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They were actually attractive women, which, does feel kind of like a waste, but what can you do? We had to get certain external forces off our backs to be able to really air this episode, which actually did win an Emmy.
Really?
Did you know that?
It was this
yeah.
one?
This one won an Emmy for sound design.
See, I knew it was an episode from this season, but I did not know it was this one.
I thought you were going to say I knew it wasn't for the writing.
Well, certainly. I wonder. So you're pretty, or rather, you were pretty well in with the writers more than I was. Do you know if the binars in this episode influenced any of the later episode where Riker falls in love with like a genderless species of alien?
Mitch, I gotta say I don't remember that episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I do not remember that.
Let me narrow it down to you. It's the one where Riker has sex with an alien.
Ah, that one.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, but it's very similar in that they kind of have this androgynous alien come on, and the whole thrust is that their whole species is androgynous, and like Riker's relationship with them is culturally problematic, I believe. And you can probably imagine the rest of the episode from there. But
right.
I've always wondered if this is like a binar situation. I didn't get a chance to ask at the time, and now it's like eating me alive.
Well, it may be a similar situation. External forces kind of acting upon the writing team to create something like that. Yeah, it might have been. This was a later season, obviously. Might have been kind of like a non-binary representation type thing.
That's possible. We always did try to get some kind of forward-thinking representation on there, and around that time is kind of when, at least in California, that these things were just starting to come out. Yeah,
it was kind of all the rage.
Right.
At the time, kind of a the in thing to be, right?
Right. You want it to be ND. Is what they
yeah,
say.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah. So yeah, probably something like that. I mean, once we watch the episode, that'll probably jog my memory, and if not, I can shoot off some emails, get in touch. But I will say that these aliens are pretty close to the aliens from the original series in the pilot episode, where Pike has a run-in with again genderless male aliens played by women. They're like masters of illusion or something.
Why is gender such a scary thing for Star Trek writers that it's the basis of several alien species?
It's a good question. We've had, even in this double episode we're doing here, this kind of been the crux of two alien species,
right? So it's a well that hopefully never runs dry, and in fact, as I alluded to, it certainly is gone back to later.
Definitely still not.
Yes.
I do have one question for you.
Okay.
Do blondes and jazz seldom go together? Do you agree with that?
That's a great question, and that's a real riddle that this episode proposes. I don't know if I know we didn't have the technology at the time, but it feels like some kind of AI wrote that line of dialogue.
I sort of understand it. Because you want when you think jazz, you think like dark, you think like more kinda.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, the computer immediately makes a woman with like light brunette hair that's almost blonde after Riker says this, which I found pretty hilarious.
What I also kind of enjoyed is the internal logic of the computer, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna make a blonde, and she's gonna be at this table. It's like, oh, the blonde wasn't good. All right, I'm gonna make a brunette, and she'll be at this table. And it's like, oh, you want a dark-haired woman? All right, at the bar. It's like,
I wonder what that's trying to say.
Right. It's weirdly intriguing to me.
Wait, we're gonna have to look up the races of those actresses.
Oh
the nationalities, that is.
Put it all together.
Yeah. Someone might have been having a chuckle.
All right, here's another riddle that I'll propose to you.
Okay.
Do you think that trombone players refer to their instrument as a bone? Like, give me the bone?
Does someone do that in this episode?
Oh, Riker does that. He's like, all right, give me a 3-piece band, bass, piano, and drums, and a bone for me.
And a bone. No, I don't think they do. Oh. If we have any trombone players in the audience, please let us know. But I mean, it's like calling a clarinet a net.
Right. It's just weird. That whole scene has so many odd things that Riker says, and like it's kind of like a 12-year-old trying to write suave adult dialogue.
It absolutely is. I always have kind of taken umbrage with every single Star Trek character somehow knowing to play how to play an instrument.
Okay, so Riker plays the trombone, but you're gonna have to fill me in going forward from this.
Well, Data plays like the violin.
But that makes sense because like he could literally learn to do anything
in like seconds. Yeah. It seems like I'm sure Picard plays something. It's such
he plays that flute in the Inner Light. The recorder.
Oh, does he?
That was the whole episode. Are you kidding me? Have you seen the Inner Light?
I way back in the day, Mitch. I do not remember.
So Picard goes on this like mind journey.
All right, we're not going to talk about the Inner Light.
God damn it.
we can talk about this later.
It's going to be like 5 years from now.
My point is, it's such an anachronistic hobby to have in the modern era of this show, and yet everyone seems to be obsessed with classical music.
And no new instruments have ever been invented, except for like green plastic cymbals on the drums.
There's just no effort to make it seem like culture has progressed in any way, and in fact, it's regressed.
Right, and you would think they were like, oh, I've been learning to play the Klingon instrument, the bar.
Yeah.
Like whatever. It's everything is not only anachronistically old, it's also exclusively from planet Earth.
Right.
Maybe Earth is the only species that has music.
No, I think the Klingons have music, don't they?
I'm sure they do, but
somewhere.
Yeah, I like
maybe in some pocket Trek novel.
There's probably a novel of Worf joining a Klingon choir and fighting to be the alpha of it.
It just speaks to a constant issue I have with Trek, where it's almost pandering to, I mean, obviously the lowest common denominator in terms of the space, but it's always pandering to this Shakespeare and classical music, and as if it's sophisticated inherently in some way, which it's not. And by this point, I would hope humanity has kind of done something to surpass stuff that was made 1,000 years ago at this point.
Well, you see, that would require creativity to generate something new rather than just talk about Shakespeare and jazz and classical music for 7 seasons.
Right, which we exhausted in making dog aliens and stuff like that.
It would have been cool for them to, so this is 1980s, to be like, all right, now in Star Trek, have a character say, I got my violin, I'm gonna play some classical music, and then they start playing fucking Rock You Like a Hurricane or something stupid like that.
Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah.
And
it would be appropriate.
Yeah, it would make sense. It's just the relevant same amount of time lag between that show now and classical music, and why wouldn't people have that same attitude towards things that are from our present?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even require creativity. You wouldn't have to make something new.
No, you wouldn't. But it would show some kind of thought, about how humans of the era interact with pop media.
Right.
But this is just an issue in much the same way that you have your language issue. This is my issue that I will constantly harp on.
These
and
anachronisms.
It's probably already got old. Yeah. But I will bring it up at every possible moment.
Please do.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of what even happened in this episode, because half of it is just nothing. And then I do like these scenes between Riker and Picard where they're preparing to storm the bridge once they realize what's going on, and they are like, "All right, we're gonna put this ship on self-destruct. I'm ready to die.
Yep.
Are you ready to die?" And they're like, "Yeah." And it was like, it's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna go in there. One of us is gonna be a distraction. Hopefully, we don't get killed, but we might have to. And it's a cool little moment of gravitas that you don't often see in season 1 Star Trek, which is probably the the best part of the episode, because really it has nothing else going for it aside from that one throwaway line from Data I mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like I said, I do enjoy watching Riker do his thing. That's always been kind of one of the things I like about Trek is just how goofy the womanizer characters tend to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can't base an episode around that, I don't think.
Not like this. You can't.
No. I mean, it's more interesting when it's an actual woman and not a computer program.
Mm-hmm.
Although then again, maybe it's not, because Angel 1 was also kind of boring.
Well, no, I mean, don't compare to that's not fair. You could easily write an episode where Riker's propensity to get himself entangled with alien women would lead to an actual conflict. You know what I mean? That would be easy.
Yeah,
even easy to write well. So it's not that you can't write something based on that. It's just in this episode, it's another convenience to resolve or lead to the non-conflict.
You see, that's the episode that needs to have the virus subplot. The Riker sex with alien women.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so Riker gets some kind of STI. It spreads around the Enterprise at an alarming rate, and they have to track down a way to make a vaccine.
They have an intervention on the bridge as all the female crew realizes that he's sleeping with all of them. See,
that's a good episode.
Yeah, definitely. like Valentine's Day, they all give him chocolate.
Right.
And they all realize that, oh, wait a minute, you're getting chocolate from her too?
Everybody but Yar.
Everybody but Yar. I don't know, maybe even Yar. You saw the way she was making eyes at him last episode.
Yeah, but would Riker do that? Would he consent?
Yeah, after a few synthols, why not?
It's true. Do you have anything else you want to talk about here with? Oh my God, 0-1 with this episode.
11001001.
Okay, all right. I forgot.
I think we've exhausted pretty much everything there is to talk about here.
Which is to say nothing. We've exhausted the nothing that.
We basically spent 40 minutes saying essentially nothing.
Good times.
Yeah. So I guess I will move on to my question for you.
Yes. Trivia time.
So,
my favorite part of the week.
Leonard, our guest actor who played Beata's little man servant.
Okay.
Remember him?
Let me stop you there. You can't just say Leonard in the context of Star Trek and expect to get away with not referencing fucking Spock.
That's why I was trying to tell you who it was. I was trying to specify which Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard Crowfoot.
I guess now that he's a bit older, he's probably Leonard Crow's feet.
Crow's feet. Very nice, Mitch. So he actually appears again.
Ooh.
In Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
As a character who is very important to Data.
Okay. And I identify this character?
Who that is, yeah.
Okay, an important character to Data. So I know that Brent Spiner plays the whole Data family. He plays Lore, he plays Dr. Soon. So it can't be any of them. I don't think that this guy is the same guy that collected Data and faked Data's death. Because I think that guy had like black hair and he kind of had like a less youthful appearance. He
was certainly not 5 feet tall.
Yeah, and he wasn't twinky. So now there's an episode where Data befriends like a grieving child, but I think this guy's too old for that.
How about this? This character is very intimately related to Data.
Intimately related to Data? Holy shit.
Very, very intimately involved with Data.
Okay. I'm trying, like, I know the Data episodes, so I'm like, I really want to get this right.
Not necessarily, I don't mean that necessarily romantically or sexually or anything like that.
I know the only one that, there's only 2 women that Data's involved with. One of them's Yar, and the other one is like some retard that he shacks up with in an episode. Look,
the R word, Mitch.
Oh, I forgot we were recording. It's okay. I can edit it out. So Data, intimately related guys. Can I get a hint?
I gave you a hint.
Can I get another hint? I'm very dedicated to this one.
Okay.
Was
I don't know if I can give you.
Was he on that planet that Data like brought radiation poisoning to?
No.
Okay. What the hell? I'm gonna have to give up, I guess. Because I've eliminated.
Oh no, really?
I've eliminated all these options, but I can't think of one that.
I think if you can't think of it, then you're probably not going to get it. Well, I mean, obviously, but what I'm saying is
it's always in the last place you look.
It's pretty obvious when you start thinking about characters that are very closely related to Data.
Can I get a season?
I don't remember the season.
All right. No, I guess you'll just have to tell me. I can't. I don't know.
Sorry. It's LOL.
It's LOL?
Yeah, you know that like disgusting
Yeah.
form.
Right.
Is complete. Yeah, that's it. Yep.
I never would have gotten that. I mean, because I usually think a LOL is like the form it ultimately takes where it's that actress.
Right. Right.
So they just
Look
needed
forward to that.
They just needed somebody short, I guess.
I guess, yeah. And yeah, that disgusting looking incomplete LOL. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yep, that was old Leo.
Well, good for him getting work.
Yeah. He did a fantastic job. Can't wait to see him again.
Well, I mean, that episode's just good in general, but
it is, yeah.
Because that's episode or rather season 3 or 4 or 5 or something. I guess people at home are gonna have to keep coming back every week until we get there. But
I guess so. Even with a little cliffhanger.
Yeah, a cliffhanger that will last several years. So until we get to season 5, everybody, I implore you to please stay readier.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
Do you consider yourself superior to us?
Should have told him to mind his own damn business.
When I stroke the beard thusly, do I not appear more intellectual?
Computer! Freeze program.
It's not a promising beginning.